Hello traders, big warm welcome, thank you very much. And I was going to say just for supporting the channel and watching here, I'm going to just have a look at this week coming up. So today's video is preparing for the week commencing Monday the 27th of June 2022, and just having a look at the high impact news that's scheduled this week. Again, I'm going to be focusing predominantly on any discussions that could be referring to fears of inflation or plans towards tackling inflation. And then anything that might reflect the impact of that. But at this point in time, I'm not getting a sense that it has spiraled out of control in the last couple of weeks. More so that there's been there's talks of rate hikes, and we need to see what the impact of that is. That being said, let's move across to the charts and have a look and see what's going on over there. So I'm going to start off here with the dollar index. I'm cleaning up the list as well. I've mixed things up a little bit here. I'm just trying to remove a couple of things that I don't think are actually adding value. And so just to keep it really simple, so starting off here with the dollar index, we still are showing quite a bit of a bullish push. This $105 is that level is definitely very attractive, and the dollar is is quite strong. However, I would say that right now there's this lack of clarity as to which way it's going to go. This has been going on for a while. We've been here before. We've been here several times over the last 3 months, and we're coming up to the end of this month as well. So the question, what I'm looking for, I want to see a strong rejection of that, see the dollar coming back down towards 198. That would give euro dollar, especially if we go have a look at it, let's look at euro dollar here, would give this a chance to kind of work its way back up in towards the middle of the range. Just as just as a temporary type of relief, and actually interestingly enough, and of course this can always change, but looking at this bit of a bullish kind of testing of that 1.06 level, price action here looking like it's producing higher lows. Looks like it is interested in testing that level and possibly or potentially breaking through that level and going high. So in the initial part of the week, I'm looking to see if we get a weaker dollar and a stronger euro. Same thing for cable. Cable also sitting here at testing these historic lows. I say historic, I shouldn't say, but areas of price that we really haven't been in. If we kind of go further back, we're looking at 1985. So that, there's a lot of history here. If we do start to break through those levels, it does become psychologically certainly quite significant, not even necessarily referring to the economic impact. So price action here on the weekly looks in isolation, looks relatively bullish, but there's no real bullish divergence to support it. And on the 4-hourly, it's looking relatively flat. On the daily, we've got some really nice bullish divergence. So what I need to see in the early part of this week, where I'm going to be looking for day trading opportunities, is a break of these previous highs. So starting to sort of break above 1.24. And absolutely, if we start to hit above 1.26 in this area, 6.6 above these old highs, I'm going to start to become more bullish, because it's going to start to pick up momentum and start to hit up towards 1.3 and 1.325. So that is if we get that weaker US dollar. Having a look at the Australian dollar as well against the US dollar, we've got a higher low at the moment, starting to look a little bit more bullish. We've got some bullish divergence there, the weekly producing a little bit of a rejection of those lows. And again, we've sort of sitting at a major level here as well, and price here starting to push up a little bit higher. It isn't a guarantee by any chance, and I don't mean that in the general sense. I'm saying that that dollar really is strong and it keeps testing that level. And I was expecting last week to kind of be that defining moment, because we had 5 days we were sitting right at the 105 level. Come on, are we going to reject it, or are we going to carry on? And actually we did very little. So we just sort of faffed around that point. And if anything, to me, that confirms that 105 level is quite serious. We've got a lot of kind of stuff. I think we've got a lot of currencies right now that are trying to decide which way they're going to go. So just looking at the kind of the wicks, the rejections of this on the Kiwi dollar as well, you can see that there's this potential. We've got a doji inside candle as well after a series of rejections off a major level. And the previous month was also quite a strong rejection of those lows. We could have a second one there. If that happens and we get that across with a lot of the majors against the dollar, we're going to see I think we'll get significant moves to the upside. And we're just not there yet. So this is what I need to be seeing. I need to see if the market is going to break these lows and commit, or if there's going to be another rejection, or potentially we start to break these highs. And right now I'm leaning, because actually, in the last week, if anything, it's just starting to look just a touch more bullish in favor of other currencies against the US dollar. So let's have a look at dollar yen as well. So dollar yen is very, very overextended from a monthly perspective. This 136 level looking particularly challenging to it as well. We've got a bit of an indecision candle here as well. Excuse me, no bearish divergence here, so not offering any clues of a correction on the weekly, but on the daily we are struggling. You can just see we've kind of struggled with this attempt to push through and immediately pushing back. We've got a bullish candle here as well, which is usually the indication if we break the high that we're going to take another move to the upside. We were starting to flatten out here. And so this week I'll be interested to see if we break the lows on the 4 hour before we break the highs. All of this, again, would start to lean towards us or indicate towards getting a stronger US dollar. Now, interesting, looking here at dollar Swissy, we've got a clear double top there with bearish divergence. And so prices come back down. We've broken the low. So we've got a slightly lower high, lower low. And looking at that monthly, that's quite a strong rejection of those levels. So, and again, I'm going to just keep an ear to the ground with regards to the SMB, with any concerns, and Bank of Japan as well, the BOJ, looking to see if there's any mention or whispers of intervention, keeping an ear to the ground with that. But here, this certainly looks as though it's trying to reject those highs and push a little bit lower. So we'll see if that's going to be the case. Dollar CAD also double topping up here as well. So we clearly, this level where we are at right now is quite significant, and it makes day trading very tricky for the newbies. It makes it very tricky because you're sitting at a major line, and our best trading opportunities happen when the market has either broken through a level or rejected it outright, and it's now moving to the next level. So when it's doing what it's doing now, where it's just hovering around a level, it's incredibly annoying and not very profitable to trade. So dollar CAD looking like it's going to reject those highs. Moving on to the ruble, just having a quick look here. So we're actually inching lower, so this is technically strengthening against the US dollar, and just looking at it here on a monthly basis, we're starting to test this level, and we could potentially push through and go back down towards 2015 levels here. Okay, so this also being the fact that it's not being used, the currency, the Russian ruble, is not being traded as much internationally as it was as a result of sanctions. And so ironically, because of it's being used more internally, it's just strengthening. It's just the case. In other words, its value is not being determined by so much outside trade as it normally is. Okay, so then having a look here, let's move on to a couple of currency pairs of interest. These are the charts that I quite like. Pound Aussie and Pound CAD. So they're range bound. I do like the fact that we've got a series of higher lows here. We are starting to look more and more bullish on the MACD. Higher lows here. Very crisp level there. It's specifically 1.775. The weekly is starting to look more and more bullish. We're starting to push a little bit higher here. And this monthly here looking quite nice. So what I'm looking for here, and I need to get it, is a strong breakout above this level. I'm probably just closing above these highs here, sort of closing around at least above, say, 1.79. And then looking for some trades. If that is the case, then I think it's going to have some strong momentum to head up towards 1.83, 84, 85, and there could be some very nice profitable day trading moves there. Not a lot in terms of swing trading opportunities on the higher time frame. Then having a look here at Pound CAD, similar thing here though. So what I wanted to talk about is the weekly chart. The weekly chart has got a very nice price action alone, has got a very strong bullish setup over here, and this looks as though it is now attempting to turn around and push a little bit higher. It's also at the bottom of a range, and Pound CAD has a history, by the way, of range behavior. It's done that in the past. But this price action alone looks as though it is attempting to turn around. And so what I need to see, I think in this case to get a bit more evidence, is bullish divergence creeping in on the MACD. We've got low lows on price action, high lows on the MACD. I'm looking for breaks above this level. And so this is the reason I'm looking at these, although the current trend's already in place, is I'm looking for the start of a new fresh trend and moves to the upside. And so I quite like the look of these. Okay, moving on to gold. All right, so far we have an inside indecision candle here, and all of this really indicating that it has that potential to turn around. It's got a downtrend. There is technically a downtrend on the weekly here, but it's not really going anywhere. This is largely range bound. We sort of looking at the closes, sort of closing a little bit lower, but not actively moving. The market doesn't really have any clear direction, and so this just makes it incredibly tricky to trade for day traders. At some point, if it's going to kick in as some sort of inflation hedge, which everybody keeps saying gold is, it's just not demonstrating it at this point in time, and possibly for silver as well. Silver keeps pushing to the downside and then starting to look more and more bullish. I need to see a rejection of these lows and start to see a real solid move to the upside. And so it's one of those ones where as soon as I see a significant move, let's call it a momentum candle, which is on the daily, which is going to move it over the line somewhere one way to the upside or the downside, then I will start looking for entry opportunities in that direction. Not seeing much of it. Copper here, for example, you can see that's a very strong bearish momentum candle as well, as though it's coming down to test these previous highs. And I need to see something similar to that. So we've got a downtrend on, not really a clear trend on the monthly, but a downtrend on the weekly and downtrend, on the daily. And that's a very nice quality downtrend on the 4 hourly. So I need to see something similar to that on gold to be able to take advantage of it. And the reason I bring up natural gas as well is because, we saw this knee-jerk reaction when Russia invaded Ukraine. We saw wheat and oil and energy prices spike. We're seeing a strong correction the other way now. Strong sort of wick rejections over here, so there's some exhaustion there, and a very strong bearish engulfing candle at this point, which usually means we're going to head straight down to these lows. potentially even further, but this is likely to be an area we are going to be at for a while. I would be surprised if we found our way back up here within 1 or 2 months, but you know, anything can happen, but I think that is not super likely. Moving at sort of crude oil, spoke about this before, there's a really nice strong level here at, let's call it 118, and we've now started to produce a bit of a bearish candle here. So here I'd be looking for a break of the low this in July. If we close as a red candle, I'll be looking for breaks there and then looking for price to head down. So interesting to me that is something that could happen. On the other hand, should we next week produce a bullish candle exactly where we are, so in other words, we don't break the low, we produce a nice green candle, then I think we're going to be looking for a move back up to that 120 level. Right now I'm leaning towards there being potentially a bit of a move lower, but just taking a look at this daily into account, it's just a little bit all over the place. Let's look at Brent crude. See, Brent has come back into these old highs here, so if I just go ahead and just mark that, it looks as though it's trying to find support at this price at 110, and looks as though it's kind of trying to produce a bit of a bullish candle. And if we closed to the upside, nice green candle closing near the highs, then I'd be more bullish. But this is inconclusive, although it is in the right place. And it is a potential signal for a turning point. It's not as bullish as it should be if the market was that hungry. And we're not seeing it on natural gas. We're not seeing it on crude. We're going to have a look at some of the other commodities and see what wheat looks like as well. So, for example, here, looking at sugar. Sugar is failing at this area. I expect it to come back and test these lows here and possibly even to break those lows and go a little bit further down. So, interesting to see commodities cooling off a bit. Here, for example, as well, coffee continually just failing at that 236 level and now starting to push a little bit lower. There's got to be a surprise or something that's either going to move the market, or I would expect it to keep going low. There we go. And so this isn't a surprise. Wheat weekly we saw last week. My expectation was for this to move a little bit lower because of these very, very strong clear rejections. And there we go. We can see a big push down here. So this is again, I would call this a momentum candle. It's really nice, and I would expect a continuation of this at least into these back into these old highs, possibly even a little bit further. I just want to go back up to crude oil. So I said last week I described it as it's got a rash, and what I meant by that was when I say it's got a rash, as in it's not looking healthy. Something's kind of come up with it. It's got a bit of acne. It really needs to kind of something's up with it. It's acting twitchy, and that's definitely the case here. So for what that means for me in terms of trading opportunities for myself, at any rate, it means to kind of watch and wait for a much clearer signal, because it's not looking as though it's ready to keep going. The nice little bullish buildup that we saw here should be just taking off, and it's not, and that makes me extremely cautious. All right, cotton. So let's look at cotton having a nice, beautiful, healthy correction. It's coming back into this area, and so this is where I would really look to see in July or August, looking to see a nice bullish candle form, and then looking to see this turnaround. Okay, but that is great. It's a really nice, healthy, kind of natural pullback into these moving averages, and therefore expect it to take a bit of a breather. Okay, so now moving on to the global indices. That's an interesting bit of price data that I've got here. Looking at it on the weekly, we've got this move down, bullish push up, and then a very sharp drop, and immediately a push back up. So this behavior tells me buyers are trying to come back in. They really are trying to come back in here. There's no bullish divergence on the indicator here, but this is really bullish. I'm in a trade on a break above the high here. So I've got some nice live open positions, some profit taken, but that actually makes sense. This was a really nice flat level breakout with a really nice bullish buildup, including bullish divergence. This was actually basically a no-brainer trade, and I'm sure you know what I mean. Also here as well, we've got a bit of a bullish push-up. So I'm looking again on the monthly charts, as I've said in either webinars or in separate analysis, I am waiting to see a nice bullish candle here forming, and July is a green candle in this case because we've seen it in the past. I'm looking to see if July is going to be the first month we get this, or August. Looking at the S&P. Also here, remember I said to you I was really concerned about this line in the sand. If we break this, I consider that significant. I've actually thought about that a lot in the last week, and actually I don't necessarily am not necessarily concerned about that, because if we just go back up, and I can just walk through this again, yes, that could potentially, if we did close the low, we could come down, but actually something similar to this could happen. It was more about the fact that we've moved all the way up here and then all the way down here, and that becomes, if you combine those two, that becomes gravestone doji, and that's a very strong rejection on, and then I don't even really want to think about what the implication of that is for going forwards. So, but breaking the low here and finishing up towards the high towards the end of the year would be a nice bullish engulfing candle, and actually that's also a very valid outcome. So this should not be as much of a concern, because that could be the similar thing you see here. We break the low and then we close back up to the high. So just wanted to kind of reduce my own alarm bell kind of upon further reflection that it's not necessarily as dramatic as I made it out to be. Again, what I want to see, we've got a little bullish wick here and a bit of a wick forming here. What I'm looking for, ladies and gentlemen, is a green candle. Anything that starts to break the high and produce a swing low here. But a small green candle for me represents some really nice, that's when I start to become more and more bullish and optimistic. And this behavior here, this sort of big move down and then a very small move down with very strong bullish candles coming in, to me says that the bears are not as present here as they were up here, and the buyers are starting to come back in. So the weighting is shifting from sellers to buyers, basically. Forget about sentiment. Sentiment and price action are two different things, by the way. Sentiment on the streets and in the newspapers is going to be as bearish as it can be, while the market is starting to shift back into an uptrend. So I don't worry about that too much. But these are starting to look good. It's a really nice area for it to turn around in. I want to see if that is the case. If we can finish the month up and then we get a potential green candle, it could be great. I'd like to see if we can do that. Right. The Russell as well coming back into these old highs. They're in an area. So if I just go back here, for example, to the Nasdaq, as I said, we could, if we're going to have a much deeper correction, if we go and have a look at it on a much higher time frame, we could find ourselves back in towards, say, 10,000 on the Nasdaq, or even a little bit low. All of that is not impossible. We've gone parabolic here, and usually when we have a correction from a parabolic move, it's usually very strong, and that brings us back in towards these old lows. So that is possibly that is feasible. However, at the same time, the way in which this is happening, we could find that the market takes another move up, then produces a lower high. So we could be in this area for a while. What I'm going to be focusing on is just the immediate price action behavior. Bring it more medium term rather than trying to make any long-term inferences from that. Mini Russell 2000 trying to find some support upon these old highs, and so let's see if it is able to do that. Let's move on to the FTSE as well. So the FTSE again trying to stay above these old highs here as well, and looking pretty much okay. If that weekly has produced a little bit of a nice little bullish candle there, we've got a higher low here, we've got a bit of a shift in trend. That looks pretty cool. So far, let's just see how that unfolds. But signs of what that tells me is that there's going to be an attempt to push higher this week. That's it. End of story. Whether they succeed or how far they manage to push up, it's going to attempt to do that here. On the other hand, look at the DAX here. This is a bearish engulfing monthly candle closing below these lows. That is not a strong signal necessarily. So what I would need to see this week, the daily looks as though it's getting ready to push higher. What I would need to see this week is a push back up, and to see that monthly candle closing above this level with a bit of a wick would be a nice optimistic sign. The Nikkei as well, look at this, just been range bound for a while. It's got this sort of almost engulfing indecision candle, which when you think about what's going on there, that's quite interesting. But yeah, I need to see this close above, and if any of those can kind of close as bullish candles up above these highs in the next few days, that would be amazing, but not to be expected. Especially when you hear all doom and gloom. Here's the ASX in Australia, also trying to stay above this level. It's a nice correction, long sort of a period of consolidation here going back to August last year, so almost an entire year where the market really hasn't done much. It's needs a bit of a stronger correction. You can see it's actually something similar here than a big correction here. We could have something similar, but again, it's also trying to find a bit of a floor here on the weekly, bit of a bullish inside candle. That's really nice. This is often a very strong buy signal, so it'll be interesting for me to see this week if we can push up all the way there, and then we would have a strong signal. So this coming week is, whereas last week I was expecting what could happen, could we possibly see a bit of a see the bottom fall out of things, it seems like actually now we might see something similar. I wanted sort of the same thing. I expected to possibly be an eventful week, but hopefully more with a positive spin, and so I'm curious to see how the markets do that. Okay, let's move on to, so I've sort of updated a couple of these. I've thrown in a couple of UK stocks. I've got rid of Royal Mail. It's boring. No offense to anyone who has that. It's really not finding it super exciting. I've added Glencore in here, and so because I've taken something with essentially a different structure, and so this has produced a sort of bearish engulfing candle, and this is where I'm looking to see if there's a correction. So when I get something, for example, I've also thrown in Tesco. So part of the reason I've thrown in Tesco is actually relatively rational and logical. You know, Tesco would be a good, I believe, would demonstrate a good, how is inflation impacting the average basket of goods for the average individual on the street, so to speak, for the layperson. And so I really want to see how that's going to be impacted here. Really, it can come back down towards these levels here. Overall, it's been performing well. It's had a couple of months or 6 months or so of coming back down, and it's staying largely where it is. So this is a nice, healthy thing. So I think, again, if I start to see this starting to head a little bit higher, that would potentially just be a shortcut, supporting the idea that possibly, at least within the UK, that people are sort of starting to, you know, that possibly there's some, at least buyers are sort of starting to come back into the market. Okay, so looking at Amex, overall, you've got to note that we've gone from this high to this low over this particular uptrend. We don't have an uptrend anymore. We haven't really tapped the previous high, and it's drifting quite a bit here. It's got a nice high low on the daily. So at this point, I'm not getting a clear signal here as to whether it is done with this move or not, but it still looks like it wants to try and push a little bit higher. So what this could end up just being is almost not a dead cat bounce, but an attempt at a move higher to see if the market is ready to go back. And if not, we'll see a failure, and then we'll see the market come back down over the coming months. So again, here you can see if you look at, say, Apple, for example, Apple here producing these strong wicks off the previous highs. That looks really bullish, similar to the Nasdaq. That is a signal here. Certainly here, I want to see if we can push back up to that 152 level. We did it before, did it back at the beginning of the month. I want to see if we can get back up there before. There's bullish divergence. There are technical signs that is certainly going to be the case. This is great. So we've got a higher low here. If you want to call it a double bottom, we've still got that bullish divergence. ARC here, ladies and gentlemen, is going to attempt its first move higher. This is great. I like this. I'm very happy. I'm going to go get myself a slice of ARC. And that's not financial advice. I'm saying that I don't want to miss the, you know, if there is a bounce of any kind, I think that, you know, it depends on your plan and your budget and how you do stuff and your strategy. But yeah, this is, for me, is going to be, I think that could be the potential signs here. We've had a big move down. We've just had nothing but red, and now we're starting to get a bit of green. I'd like to see if this is going to be our move up towards 70. Will it turn out to be the ultimate bottom? No, there isn't necessarily enough evidence at this time. AT&T managing to push themselves a little bit back up here. I see that I read an interesting article today on how they're going to try to get back to their original services, and we'll see if possibly that's what's boosting them here. Well, we will see about that, won't we? Okay, Berkshire Hathaway. Oh, wow, this is interesting to me as well. Again, Berkshire Hathaway could really, I think, benefit from a nice bullish candle here. Something small, you know, a little bit, nothing too attention-grabbing that could ultimately be a nice boost to the upside. But that's a nice bullish candle. I want to see if we can stay back up in this range this week, if that's going to be the case. As opposed to, you know, I mean, again, there's clues that you get if the market tries to move up and then has an embarrassing collapse or failure. Then there's another hint to the move down. BP. Okay, so we've already gone through the commodities. The commodities at this point are not looking as strong. They look like they want to come back down. And so again, that is revealing itself in both this and I'm guessing Exxon. There we go. Exxon is well overpriced, overextended here. This has got 80 written all over it, or potentially a little bit further down towards 70. So let's see if that is the case and if it does trigger this week. Coca-Cola holding strong, really looking good. That's a very nice bullish candle. We've broken sort of this line down here, so we're starting to look more bullish. Almost a bit of a swing low on the weekly there. This daily looking all right. So, but however, hold on, let's just talk about this. I still anticipate that we could have some issues here. So what does it say to me? It tells me that I expect it to push higher, but I want to see how we close at the end of the month. Are we able to close above that level? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fascinating. Okay. General Motors, not necessarily as strong, but there's still signs here of it being interested to push up. No bearish divergence at all here. This is looking very convergent. All of this is really showing signs that it's not ready to turn just yet. I'm just going to highlight there's quite a few green candles in here, so buyers candles, let's call it that, and a break break and a close above here, but there are no signs of that. There's no, often I can see when the price action is saying I'm going to push higher, but I'm not seeing that here. But yeah, that would be a good sign. JP Morgan Chase, okay, again, bearish engulfing candle. Right now heading towards closing below the lows of this, not a sign of strength at all. Nice little bullish candle over here. So again, that slightly high low, bit of bullish divergence there, implies it's going to push, it's going to try and push a little bit higher this week. Okay, that's interesting to me. So all the little signals they are giving, Meta, same as well, definitely here, starting to push a little bit of a nice little bullish candle. They're closing right near the highs. And it's starting to try to hit the break. So it's trying to potentially, it's trying to set 150 as its absolute bottom. And so I wonder if it's going to be able to do that again. I'm going to need to see more evidence of that. A little bit of bullish divergence creeping in here. Again, I think similar to JP Morgan above it, it's got to show that it's going to be able to do that. But not seeing some strong signs of it. Some of the others are. Morgan Stanley as well here looking. That's a bullish engulfing candle. We've got some, no divergence showing in here as well. That's a bit bullish. 4 hours looking good. Monthly looks not as strong. So these two, both JP Morgan Chase, Meta and Morgan, all looking a bit wobbly. But if the market has a lift, they might just benefit from it. Let's look at Netflix. Like ARK, for example, is showing clear signs of wanting to push up. Even here, we've got a consolidation. We need to break these highs. We need to close right up here to see that. And that is definitely what it's trying to do. We've got that bullish divergence. This is what Netflix is trying to do. It wants to break above these highs and push a little bit higher. Interesting. NVIDIA as well. Finding a strong, might want to call it sort of accumulation phase. That's looking nice and bullish. We're in the right area price-wise. There's a lot of things that look pretty cool here. So again, we only really, the game changes when we break the high here. So this downtrend breaks. The game changes. If we come up and we produce a lower high and we come back down, then the game is going to look more like it wants to break and continue to the downside. But if we come up here and break these, then it starts to look very different. So that's why I say, initially that's what looks to be the case. Look here as well. Look at these sort of consistently sort of generally sized sort of, sorry, let me say that again. Generally consistently the same sort of size candles. And then largely here we've been getting small candles. Small candles tend to precede big moves. And so we've got bullish divergence there. We've got big moves turning down, slowing down here. I'm not convinced this is going to be able to do a big turnaround, but I'm relatively confident it's going to try to move up a little bit here. I'm just not convinced it's not showing as much of that one. This one, for example, looking incredibly bullish. Look at this, just super, super bullish. And that's not just a retracement. That's usually or at least not just a simple move up here that looks like it wants to do quite a bit of a deeper correction. Look at that strong bullish monthly candle. That looks good, man. I'm pretty happy with some of this stuff. Spotify. Okay, Spotify is just trying to do a swing low at this point. This is trying just not to drown while everything else is doing well. I expect a bit of a push up, but how far up? I'm not entirely sure at this time. Tesla. All right, Tesla's doing okay, similar. It's got similar kind of green shoots here. Lots of sort of bullish inside candle. That's potentially, and again, that blue area is not a bad area for it to turn around and find some value. If this closes as a bullish monthly candle here, that's going to be a great signal. As I said, on the other hand, if they don't break these highs and instead they produce lower highs and close to the downside by the end of the week, then that hints at further downside in the markets. But this is the first time in a while that I have seen there is definite enthusiasm to push higher. That's great. So it'll be in the notes. I'll do that. If there's something you want me to have a look at, guys and girls, ladies and gents, if there's something you would like me to analyze, if you feel that I add value, then just comment on it on the YouTube channel section. I mean, that's how I've ended up with a few of these, coffee and wheat and cotton, because obviously Usman, you asked me to do that, so I've included those if you want me to do it. Let's carry on. So Vanguard as well, I'm expecting this to push a little bit higher again. These are not the strongest setups I've seen, but it's gapped up. Look at this, literally no wick below, no wick above, solid entire session was just buying from start to finish, and it gapped up. That is not a sign of weakness. It could be a bit of a bounce. I know people see it as a bounce, but let's deal with whether it's a bounce later. Let's just deal with this week. What is it going to do? We'll know more by the end of next week if it is a bounce or not. But all I can say is this week for me, for day trading opportunities, these look more bullish than bearish. Okay. Right. So let's look at the bonds as well. I've reduced the list again. So I've got the 10-year T-note that's under slow down a little bit here as well. Strong wick off the bottom here, historic level as well. So again, it's going in bullish divergence, so it might want to slow down similar to some of those stocks. And we've got here again, for example, the Eurobond is also producing a similar thing, and that could end up, it's had a big drop. Would be interesting to me if we end up with a very strong bullish candle here, at least with a long tail. Then that would imply there's going to be a bit of a move to the upside. Okay, let's check our cryptos now. So do I expect cryptos again? Do I expect them to follow through? Yeah, I think if we're going to get a bit of a bounce, then I think it's fair. But I have to say at this point, not seeing a lot of not expecting a lot yet. For me, cryptos at this point in time almost feel as though they might just do a correction and then carry on down. At this time, they've done, without a doubt, similar to so many tech stocks, they have shed enough fat. So they're in a good area to find a base and potentially turn around. They just don't, you're not seeing it as much of it in the price action. So, but however, we've got a high low here on Ethereum. We've got the potential for a small bullish candle forming now, which could be a swing low. So again, I'd start to be more bullish once we break the previous, so sort of not last week, but the previous week's high. Then we start to get that really nice bullish swing low at the bottom and push up towards 2,000 here on Ethereum, or potentially a little bit higher. It's a great area for it to find a bit of a base. So yeah, interesting. Okay, Cardano just started to slip through this. So I think we really just have that. It's desperately trying to find a bit of a base there on the daily. Again, I need to see these highs broken, okay? Because then we start to head up towards where we were sort of more in May, or possibly a little bit before that. Okay, so just keep an eye on those. Binance, this is where that gets a little bit interesting. This behavior is a little bit more bullish divergent. And again, a strong finisher could see a move back up towards these highs if the market is going to continue to do it. But cryptos are not showing the bullish green shoots that equities are. Okay, it doesn't mean anything. It could simply be lagging by a week. We could get through next week and see that the equities have done a bit of a move higher, and then see some really nice bullish green shoots in cryptos. So, in fact, I'm relatively confident that is the case. And again, nice bullish candle here could be similar to these, could be a nice move back up to the upside. So yeah, having a look at this, I want to see if these do continue to do that. Clear bullish divergence on this indicator on the MACD there, and we've got fresh lows there. It looks as though it wants to try and push a little bit higher. Obviously, there's not, in terms of sentiment, to go back to that, not a lot of that on the street. Excuse me. But that doesn't mean that it isn't tight, isn't going to do it. So, ladies and gents, I think just to summarize, interesting, because we have hints that we're going to see a weaker dollar. And when I say hints, meaning that it feels like a 65-35 kind of leaning towards that. We'll have to see if that's the case. We're still in the same area, so we haven't pushed away from it either way, and therefore it's still a risk. And I'm seeing hints of bullishness returning to the indices as well as to equities, not yet so much to the cryptos. And so to me, again, it's also time for caution, because again, the market is at that turning point. It's an accumulation or / distribution phase, whichever way you want to look at it, where the market is trying to decide what its next moves are going to be, and therefore that risk carries on. But the difference is between last week and this week, where last week it looked just a little bit like it was going to test those levels or potentially keep going. This week, it now looks as though it's going to test the other way. It's going to try and test it and be a little bit more bullish. So interesting, and I see some potential opportunities there. I want to wish you the best of the week going ahead, and look after yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Thank you.